All right, thank you. And obviously, at first, huge thanks to Rohan and David and the Osiris Lab leadership. We really appreciate you all having us come present. This is exciting opportunity for us. Um, and just to keep it brief on my end, I'm just going to kind of do the what, the how, and the why about Bugcrowd and bug bounties in general, and then fortunately, you're going to have the chance to hear from Chris, who's a hacker on our platform and other platforms, and then a pen tester by day. So he's got a ton of relevant experience to share with you that I think you'll appreciate. So first, you can do the next slide for me. Yeah, there we go. So the what? Bugcrowd is a crowdsourced security platform. Um, Essentially, what we do is match uh, hackers and companies with skills relevant to both, basically. So it's API, web, IoT, you name it. We even have a Web3 presence. It's pretty exciting right now. That's actually the area that has the biggest rewards at the moment. They have one OpenSea, if you're familiar with them. They do NFTs. They have a $3 million P1 bounty right now. So tons of opportunity in that space. But yeah, so most companies don't have the financial resources to have a huge security team working all the time. So essentially, what the gap that we filled was in that space. We realized that companies are constantly going to need to assess their security, so they come to us. We reach out to the crowd and connect the two, and kind of act as the go between. And it's growing rapidly. You hear me? Okay.
Yeah, we can.
Great. Yeah, and the how is we connect the two groups through AI and human driven matching, right? So, like I said, the skills that the hackers start to develop in the platform get notated, and then we're able to connect them with the companies that need those specific skills. And then, we just charge the company side. Hackers don't lose any money from us through the platform, and it's working pretty well. And the reason we're here is because the hacker population has to continue to grow, and we need to not just grow the numbers but also the skill sets, and that's why we're here to talk to y'all, to be honest with you, because you're the future of security. I mean, even if you go into the traditional corporate route, you're still going to be wanting to stay abreast and stay on top of the security trends and that kind of thing, and that's why we wanted to talk to y'all so you can hopefully start doing that on our platform. And that's not to say that this is an easy occupation or even hobby, as you all know. And because of that, if you'll skip to the next slide for me, please. Because of that, I reached out to some of our top hackers, and you'll see the top lines. Inzinga, he's Chris talking to you today, just to hear from them, like, hey, what kind of advice would you provide folks who are kind of new or newish to the ethical hacking bug bounty world? And you can see Chris's recommendation, which he'll talk to in a little bit, I think is completely relevant to this group, because he used it to like essentially level up in his first job outside of college, which was hugely important. And then in general, the theme that I heard from folks is just like, it's not easy. It definitely requires grit, but if you can stick with it and continue to learn, you'll find a community that's extremely supportive to help you in that learning, and also you find the chance to make a little extra cash on the side. um, Skip to the next one for me. And then so the why of Bugcrowd, sort of some of the differentiators, because there are a lot of platforms out there, and we're definitely not pretending like wouldn't want to join some of the others. But what separates us is a few things: the safe harbor, which most of the companies have that, but it's just the question we get a lot is like, is this legal? And it's yes, the companies agree to not seek legal repercussions or anything like that, because they want you to find the bugs. That helps them, right? That makes them less vulnerable. It's a lot cheaper to hire us as a company to support you in finding the bugs than it is to pay the average. I think the cost now is like 7 or 8 million for a takeover. So it's much more affordable to use a bug bounty platform. And then learning. Once you have an account set up, you can jump in. There's public programs, there's VDPs that you can just start digging around. And as much as we all like CTFs, there's really nothing quite like hacking in the wild, like actually going on a site and finding real vulnerabilities. I just was supporting a hacker today, and he found vulnerabilities. It was a subdomain takeover at NASA, which is hilarious. Somebody had like found a couple subdomains and like put their stuff up for like photography services, and I can't remember what part of the word was, but it was crazy. And, like, the hacker was super excited because he like helped NASA out. Then the next one, this is one of the things Chris will also talk about, is the vulnerability rating taxonomy. It's an open source taxonomy that Bugcrowd has created with hackers to essentially help companies and hackers agree upon what defines a specific level of vulnerability, like from P1, the most severe, all the way down to P5, just informational, right? And that does a couple things. It helps resolve any potential conflicts over payment, right? Like if you and I both know that this is a P1, that means you need to pay me X number of dollars. And also it's a learning opportunity because it's very, if you go to Bugcrowd BRT, you can search it on Google and just check it out real quick, just like server side injection. And it just has a very simple language around what is defined in terms of like severity, which is extremely helpful. And one of the things that Chris said helped him in upskilling his hacking skills. And then lastly, community and cash. Like our community is very strong. We, one of the reasons I'm here is like we support the hackers and want them to honestly be happy, continue to learn, and flourish and make money, because that's, if that's happening, then we're also doing well. And the money situation, like again, I'm not here to sell you a timeshare. Like it's not easy, but if you can figure it out, stick with it, you can definitely make pretty decent money in the long term. And that's something Chris can also speak to. And then next slide. Also, just a chance to work on some really cool companies, products, and sites from Tesla, MasterCard. If you think about it, like if you're finding bugs for companies this large, you're really impacting millions of people in terms of like protecting their data and that kind of thing. And it's a pretty good opportunity to beef up your resume and your LinkedIn profile. Another thing that Chris will mention, because it's definitely real that you can say like, helped find bugs, like for example, the NASA one today, which is a pretty good resume builder. Next slide. And that's it. So I wanted to keep it brief because Chris is the person that I think you really want to hear from, and hopefully save enough time for Q&A. So if you have any questions for me, keep them to the end. I can answer those for you, but I'll hand it over to Chris to jump into his presentation.
Sure. I'll just get Chris's.
Yes, it should be a PowerPoint. Also, some PDFs are in there, but let's start with the PowerPoint if that loads.
Okay. Download to my device.
I haven't seen that before, but that's pretty cool. I guess it's through iCloud or something.
Yeah, probably. Interesting. Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the PowerPoint first, and then we can move over to the rest.
Yep, that sounds good.
Oh.
I think it's good, right?
Okay, yeah. Perfect. You can go ahead.
Okay, sounds good. So thank you, Link, for that introduction. As Link mentioned, my name is Chris Inzinga, and I'm a bug bounty hunter as well as a pen tester. Today, we're going to talk briefly about my background, who I am, and how I got into bug bounty and pen testing. And then I'm just going to share some tips about bug bounty pen testing in general. Then we'll move into the case studies, and we'll actually talk through some valid bug bounty reports that I've submitted. And we can see the corresponding payouts and what a qualifying report would be. And then at the end, we'll open it up for some Q&A for any questions you guys may have. We can move into the next slide. So here up on this slide, I just have some of my credentials and kind of some of my background, some certifications I hold in the industry, some community outreach I've done, my bug bounty experience and work experience. And while this slide is up, I'm just going to tell kind of a little story about my background and how I first learned about bug bounty hunting and how I kind of got into it. And that starts back in 2019. At the time, I was pursuing my degree in information technology, but I had an interest in bug bounty hunting. I had an interest in cybersecurity at the time. And so I kind of heard that certifications were pretty important in this industry. So in mid-2019, I started by earning my Security Plus certification, as well as the Certified Ethical Hacker from EC Council. Those are just kind of the first two certifications I had heard about in the industry. Looking back on it, if I had to give advice to my former self, I would say that the Security Plus did hold decent foundational information. I don't know that I'd recommend the CEH, but that was kind of how I got my toes wet in cybersecurity. moving into the end of 2019, I had kind of learned about hands-on certifications. So the first one I heard about there was Offensive Security's OSCP. And at the time, this sounded like, the coolest certification in the world. For those of you who aren't familiar, it's a 24-hour proctored exam. It's introductory pen testing, but it still holds a lot of weight today, and it's a pretty great course. So by the end of 2019, I had earned my OSCP, and moving to 2020, I was pretty excited about cybersecurity. And it was around March of 2020 that I first heard about bug bounty. That's kind of the point in time that I can remember first hearing this term and learning about it. I was actually listening to a podcast at the time called Darknet Diaries. If any of you guys are familiar with that, it's a pretty good cybersecurity podcast where the host shares interesting stories. And he was interviewing a bug bounty hunter, and so that's kind of how I, got introduced to all of this world. And my interest was immediately hooked, right? Because the concept sounded almost too good to be true, right? I had just come off of all these certifications, and here I was presented with the opportunity to potentially hack on real companies and with the prospect of earning some money. But at the same time, I'll say I was kind of skeptical. I'd read about it on Twitter, or I've heard some people had mixed opinions about bug bounty. So I set out to kind of do an experiment, right? To empirically determine if this was something that I was interested in. At the time, I was going to school, so I actually used my student email to sign up for a 30-day free trial of Burp Suite Professional. For any of you who aren't familiar, Burp Suite is kind of the de facto web application pen testing software. It's useful for intercepting, replaying, relaying, and tampering with HTTP requests. So I got a 30-day free trial of that. And I said to myself, I'm going to sit down every single day for the next 30 days while I have this software, and I'm going to learn bug bounty hunting. And I laid out a few goals for this. First and foremost, of course, was to learn about bug bounty hunting, learn web security better, and just kind of level up my skill set. And the secondary goal was to earn enough bounties in those 30 days to pay for a 1-year license of Burp Suite. I think at the time that was about $400. So those were my two goals. First and foremost, to learn and have fun. Secondly, to try and make $400. So that's what I did. I set out, and at the time I was going to school still, so I woke up every morning around 6:30 to get 2 to 3 hours of hacking time in before classes or work began or whatever I was doing that day. And I did that, and I had a lot of fun. I'll say I learned way more in those 30 days of hands-on practical hacking than I had from any of the certifications I had learned prior to that. Had a great time, learned a lot, and I'm happy to say I did make my goal. I was able to afford a 1-year license of Burp Suite after that. So, all in all, it was a success.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, fast forward, here we are just about 4 years later, and I've been afforded plenty of great opportunities. As you can see, I have some good bug bounty experience. I'm currently 70th on Bugcrowd's platform with 600 vulnerabilities reported just in the platform. I've had the opportunity to speak on Bugcrowd webinars as well as with other content creators such as the Cyber Mentor or Tiberius. I've also attended Black Hat and DEF CON. And so it's just been a really great way to meet people in the community. And of course, since graduating, I've now worked as a pen tester for 2 years at a variety of companies. And that was after graduating in 2022. And then just outside of information security, I live in Vermont, so I enjoy hiking, skiing. I'm an avid home brewer of brewing my own beer, and I'm a Star Wars fan. So that's just kind of my background and how I got into all this. We can go ahead and move into the next slide. All right. So getting into bug bounty hunting, I'm just going to talk through kind of some of the common questions I get about getting into bug bounty, and hopefully that'll answer some of the broader questions any of you guys may have. Starting out with hardware requirements, this is one question I get a lot. People wonder if they need to go out and buy the beefiest laptop they need to be running all this software. And the good thing about that is the answer is no. Whatever computer you're sitting at right now is more than enough to get started with bug bounty hunting, as long as it has a web browser and an internet connection. I personally hack from a Mac, but I know there's many great hackers out there using Windows or Linux. It's really whatever you're comfortable on. And that's one of the things that I've enjoyed about it. I don't have to, mess around with virtual machines or anything. I can just hack from, my main laptop. Next up, I get asked about certifications. While I do hold a number of certifications, and I did talk about how I had earned a few before, that's by no means necessary. Bug bounty hunting has been around for a while, and something I've seen recently is some of these certification providers have been putting out certified bug bounty hunter courses, which I think is kind of interesting because I don't really know how you can be certified in bug bounty hunting, but the good news is you don't need to go out and purchase any certifications to get started. I would say the single best resource is Portswigger's Web Academy, which for anyone not familiar, Portswigger is the company who makes Burp Suite. They have a free web academy that you can sign up for, and it goes through tons of vulnerabilities. They have interactive labs, and it's really just a great learning experience. I would say anyone who works through that and has completed it all would put them in an amazing spot to begin bug bounty hunting, or even starting as a pen tester if that's your goal. So yeah, you need any certifications to get started, that's when it's free to do bug bounty hunting. Next up, common tools. This kind of varies between different bug bounty hunters. I generally just use a handful. First and foremost, a web browser with Burp Suite hooked up to it. I would say it's good to have a directory brute forcing tool of choice, whatever that is. There's many different flavors these days. And then just Nmap or SQL map or common tools like that. You don't need a whole lot to get started. And that's really another great thing about it. One thing I will mention here that kind of ties into both tools and hardware, I do personally pay $10 a month for a DigitalOcean droplet, which just helps to have a Linux server in the cloud if you need a public IP address to serve files from or catch a reverse shell. So that is something that I do pay for, and is a good thing to have. Next up, so you've got your hardware, you've got your tools all set up, and you're ready to pick a platform. Like Link mentioned, there's lots of great platforms out there. Obviously, I'm associated with Bugcrowd, and I have done most of my work on them over the last few years. But there's many top platforms out there, or many platforms out there like Bugcrowd, HackerOne, Cynic, and Integrity. And generally, you'll see many of the same features across the platform. So this one kind of does come down to personal preference. I would say starting out, don't pigeonhole yourself. Definitely try out the different platforms, see what works for you. I personally have stuck with Bugcrowd because early on when I was learning to hack, I submitted some reports that were definitely questionable, low impact, not really applicable. And the triage team from Bugcrowd actually took the time to work with me and explained, why these issues I had found did not pose a security risk. On some other platforms, I got a pre-canned message. See a message. Can you guys hear me still?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. Oh, sorry. I just saw that something about the main feed. Okay. So yeah, if you guys can hear me, we're good to go. So early on, like I was saying, Bugcrowd was pretty helpful with that. They explained why the issue I had found was not a security vulnerability. On some other platforms, I just got kind of the pre-canned boilerplate message of, hey, maybe go review the OWASP top 10 and get better at web security was pretty much what I took from the message. So having that
was
personalized
harsh.
feedback, having that was definitely helpful for me. And to this day, I've stuck primarily with Bugcrowd. Once you're on a platform, you'll see a variety of programs. Plenty of awesome programs to choose from. If you're into mobile hacking, there's that. If you're into desktop applications, there's programs that offer that. If you're into web hacking, of course, there's plenty of that. External networks, even as I think Link mentioned in his presentation. Now there are some kind of AI and large language model testing. I actually got added to a program the other day where we were testing a large language model and attempting to elicit an AI biased response, and they'd actually pay out a bounty for every prompt that generated a biased response. So that's a pretty interesting concept. But yeah, so there's plenty of programs. You can find one that works for you. And then getting into bug bounty hunting styles. So over the years, I have seen a variety of styles when it comes to bug bounty hunting. Generally, you could classify them into manual hunters versus automation hunters. And I think a manual hunter, generally, when you're approaching a target, you're giving a more holistic, a holistic assessment. It's almost like a pen test, right? You're not focusing on any single bug, on anything. You're instead kind of doing a whole assessment and making sure that you're checking every functionality for every type of issue and really going top to bottom. Another common hunting style is there's a lot of people tried to automate bug bounty hunting, which definitely has worked out very well for some people. And I think it is kind of an interesting idea to automate bug bounty hunting. But with this, I'll say a word of warning. Some of the people in the automation game have been doing it for 10 years or more, and they're spending thousands of dollars every month on cloud computing bills. So if you think you're going to start today, just know that kind of that's what you're competing with if you want to go the automation route. But it has worked very well for some people. I know some people have started as automation bug bounty hunters, and they ended up starting a enterprise business for asset monitoring because they've got so good at automating bug bounty and such. Final hunting style I want to touch on is people who will hunt for or reverse 0 days or end day vulnerabilities. Say if you were an interested person, you could find a particular software that's used by a lot of companies. You could dig into it, do a real in-depth code review, and perhaps find your own issue. And then you could go out and farm that across every single bug bounty platform. Big opportunity for big profit there, if that's your thing. And then, just checking. You guys can still hear me, right? I see some messages about losing the feed.
Oh, no, we can hear you.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I was just catching up on some messages and wanted to make sure everyone could still hear me. And then finally, time commitment. Early on, it'll definitely be tough to find a bug, and I think a lot of people do get discouraged by that and give up before they even really get started. Like I said, in my thing, I was waking up every single morning and getting some hours of hunting in. I would say starting out, definitely try to stick to a program for 8 hours or more before you're switching. So you really dig in and understand all the functionality of that program. And a lot of people will just skip from program to program without putting in the time, and that leads to frustration and not finding any bugs.
Oh, Chris, just a sec. What I'm going to do is I'm going to reshare. I think online folks are not able to see it. Sorry about that.
Okay. Yeah, no worries.
Oh, can you folks see it now? Because what I'm going to do
Curious as why nothing's being recorded.
or here as well. Okay.
Can someone verify that they could see the screen and or hear this from their computer?
Right
Would
now, what
help
I'm
us.
seeing, I was seeing an infinite mirror of screen sharing, but I don't see anything right now.
Yeah, I stopped sharing just
Try
to
again.
reshare again.
No, change it to 20. Anyone see this?
Can everyone see this?
Again, yeah, I'm seeing the infinite screen share right now.
Yeah,
Okay,
so,
okay.
so it's working fine. And all right, we're good to go.
Oh, yeah, we're
Let's-
good to
let's
go.
keep
All right.
going.
Thanks. Yeah. So let me just switch back to the PowerPoint. All right. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. That was about
wait,
all I
just
had
a
for
sec.
this slide.
Just a sec. I'll just extend.
Awesome.
Wait, what? Okay. Yeah.
Are we all good?
Yeah, I think we're good.
Okay. Yeah, that was about it for this slide. Just I have two photos here of some of the opportunities I've gotten through Bugcrowd. In the upper right corner, we have myself seated there at the live hacking event in Las Vegas. And then the photo below it is actually from the same year. I was speaking at Bugcrowd's Black Hat booth. So again, just some of the opportunities that getting involved with bug bounty hunting can really have. All right, we can move into the next slide.
Oh, now just a sec. I think Link is texting saying there's no audio. But I think Chris, I can hear you. You can hear me. That's weird.
Yeah, if you can hear me, then that's all right.
Yeah. Oh, we can. Okay. Audio is fine. Oh, weird. Okay, never mind. I think it's happening for some, but for most of us, it's going good.
Okay, we can go ahead to the next slide.
Okay.
And so, yeah, nothing too major on this slide. I just wanted to compare some of the key points that I had talked about in the last slide to how that kind of compares to pen testing. Like I've said, I got into the industry just in the last 2 years as a pen tester right out of college. So I hope that some of the insights or views I have might be relevant still to the industry. Touching back on certifications, these definitely hold more weight when you get into pen testing if you're trying to get your first pen testing job. So again, if you have time, during college, with class load and everything, I would highly recommend knocking out some certifications that can really give you a leg up when applying. The next bullet point I have listed here is resume fodder, and I want to touch on a few things. So, as a student, there was a number of things I did which I found very helpful to kind of pad my resume, and they're all very low or no cost things that I think look great. The first and foremost is hosting a blog. These days, you can host a dirt cheap blog with GitHub pages, and they look really good. All you have to do is buy a domain name. And just publishing content about, CTF write-ups you did, hack the box machines you worked on, anything like that is really great content. It doesn't have to be anything groundbreaking. But in multiple of my pen testing interviews, I had people, ask me about blog posts I'd written, and it was a good conversation starter. Other than that, if you're not into blogging, you could have an active GitHub profile, and that looks really good as well. And then finally, another thing is getting and earning CVEs, so publishing vulnerabilities. A lot of people, when they think of a CVE, think that they have to kind of release the next Windows local privilege escalation or something like that. But in reality, you can find any kind of commercial software that's hosted on GitHub and go ahead and attack that. And that would qualify you, for a CVE if you found an issue in it. So these are just some things that you can do for, low to no cost that look great on a resume. Next up is networking. See some people talking about audio. Can you guys hear me? Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry if you guys are having issues, but we'll get through this and then I'll show some bug bounty write-ups, which will be a bit more interesting than the slide. But yeah, networking. So, kind of since COVID, networking has changed. Traditionally, you'd be going out to conferences or local meetups and handing out your business card, right? But those days are kind of gone. In fact, both of the pen testing jobs I've gotten have been through connections I actually knew through Discord. So getting active in various communities, meeting people, you'll find the local people, you'll meet up once a year at DEF CON, and that could actually land you a job. So don't discount that. Touching on work experience, Link kind of mentioned this in his presentation that I was working on bug bounty throughout college, and I found that really helpful to put on my resume as it was empirical statistics I could write down. I had submitted X number of bugs to X number of programs, and the first company I applied to actually took that experience and translated it into work experience, letting me start as a mid-level pen tester instead of entry level. So again, just another free thing you guys could do if you have some extra time, and really helps the resume. Again, here I just touched on soft skills because this is something that I kind of heard when I was applying to jobs, and I was more of the mindset that I just wanted to go out and have things. I didn't want to have to deal with client communication or anything like that. But that is an important factor, and that's a reality of the job. If you do want to go into pen testing, that's something that will be important to keep in mind. And finally, when looking for jobs, internal versus a consulting position, this is something to keep in mind that I didn't really think when applying to jobs. If you're on an internal security team, your job may be a bit more relaxed. You may be, looking at your company's applications, less stringent deadlines. You don't have to worry about billable hours and utilization. Conversely, in a consulting position, those are, you have to worry about those metrics, but you're also looking at different applications every single week. So it might be a bit more exciting. And yeah, that was it for this slide. So just, comparing some things to bug bounty. Hopefully that was a little bit insightful. We can go ahead into the next slide. All right. So I just put this one up here. My company, White Oak Security, will be looking for interns this summer. We ran the program last year for the first time, and it was a pretty great success. We let people get hands-on experience with pen testing, reporting, and client communications. We also purchased training and certifications. So I see that I think you guys have a jobs channel in this Discord. If that's something that's interesting to you, I can post a link for that.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. Thanks for that, Chris. You can
Okay.
post this one as well as in future. You can use the jobs and internships channel there and post it. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'll post that for anyone
Thank
who's
you.
looking for that opportunity. All right, and with that, we can get into some case studies here on the next slide, and we can look at some actual bug bounty reports. So in that email I sent over to you, I believe there was 4 PDFs. I labeled them like 00, 01, 02, and 03 to start. So we can go ahead and get started with 00, which should be titled XML external entities via SAML authentication.
I think I already have the 00. Okay, 01 is there. Okay, so I'm gonna XML.
Oh yeah, sorry, 01 is the first one, my mistake. Okay, yeah, so what you'll see now is this PDF is a print screen of the bug bounty platform. These are bugs that I've submitted over the years. I just picked out 4 interesting ones that I thought would be fun to kind of talk through. Done my best to redact all the sensitive information here. Go ahead and scroll down. So we see the title is the XML external entities, which is XXE, via SAML authentication allows for local file inclusion. You can go ahead and go to the second page there of that PDF. Just some information here. Like Link was mentioning, the priority there is P1, which is that vulnerability rating scale that Bugcrowd has. We can see a server-side injection, XML external entity injection, XXE. Moving on to the next page. All right, so these are the steps to reproduce. So this is what I wrote, and this is what was submitted to the Bugcrowd program in order for them to triage and reproduce the issue. So starting out, we have a description. I tell the triager and the security team to go ahead and in Burp Suite install the extension SAML Rater. For anyone who routinely tests web applications or uses it, this is a very helpful extension to have. And next up, I say on your web server, create a file called test.ttd with the following contents. As we discussed, having a web server with a public IP address is very helpful with bug bounty hunting because you can serve files and serve payloads. If you're familiar with XML external entity attacks, the contents there will just exfiltrate the contents of the file etc hostname to my web server there on the second line. We can see it'll make a request to data equals P1. And that'll exfiltrate the contents of the file. Of course, you got to tell them to replace the IP with that of their own web server just to ensure that that triage goes smoothly. In steps to reproduce here, we navigate to the following URL, which is a single sign-on page. That was what I was looking at. And we log in with the credentials provided by the bounty brief, turning on Burp Suite's interception, forwarding the requests until we see again the single sign-on request. And if you scroll down to the next page, I believe I have the HTTP request there. It's kind of hard, maybe if you can zoom in a little bit. Yeah, so it is a post request to that page, and within the body of the post request, we have the SAML response and that big string there. The next screenshot. What's great about Burp Suite's SAML Rater's extension is it automatically decodes the base 64, and we can see the raw SAML message, which, if you're familiar with that, is XML. So you can probably see where this is going, XML external entity attack. We go ahead and append our payload there, which again, just the common payload. It'll call out to that web server, retrieving the test.dtd file, and use the E1 declaration. After adding the appropriate line breaks and everything, we go ahead, and that was the final request. Scroll down, and upon submitting that request, we'll see on our web server, first the request to the test.dtd file, followed up by the request to the with the data parameter, and the exfiltrated host name there was agent service, a string of random characters. And so that was what it took for a qualifying P1 submission. It was just observed that while logging into the application, SAML was in use and it was vulnerable to XML external entity attacks. So yeah, that's the first write-up we have. I guess if there's any questions about that, we could ask them at the end, or if there's any questions, we could go over it now. But I've got a few other ones to show.
I think we can do the questions at the end. We can go over the stuff first.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. All right, so next
So,
up, yeah, it should be O2, LFI via PDF.
Okay.
Alrighty, so getting started with this one, we can go ahead to the second page there. Again, we just see, the rating taxonomy, as Link mentioned, a server-side injection, file inclusion local, which qualifies as a P1, and that's what the issue is triaged as. Moving into the second page, or the third page there, we'll have the steps to reproduce. Here I included a brief description of what local file inclusion was, as well as the impact. So the steps to reproduce here was to navigate to this URL, which was actually a learning management system for a school, which was pretty cool. Logging in as the organization or school admin, we created a new lesson, inserted arbitrary text in that lesson, and intercepted it with Burp Suite. Again, here we have the HTTP request. I think you can zoom in to the body of that there, the body of the request. Yeah, so we see the contents. It's a opening p HTML tag followed by iframe. Contents of Etsy pass.wd, and close those tags. So the functionality we saw here was there was a print to PDF or create PDF functionality. This is always something that's very interesting to look at because these are generally processed server side. So if you can get any sort of HTML injection here, you can do pretty cool things. So you're telling it to load the local file. We rendered to a PDF, and we can see in this next screenshot here, we've created our PDF, and the server helpfully gave us the contents of the Etsy password file. So pretty cool little chain there. I've had a friend say that whenever you see a PDF generator, there's going to be a bug there. It's something that I've found is pretty true, as it's very hard to implement them correctly. So of course, in the most impactful case, you could have local file read through the PDF generation functionality. All right, that was that for that. That was all for that report. Next is 03. So this one was a pretty fun bug bounty report that I submitted. It was remote code execution via an email address. Again, we just see the rating here is remote code execution, P1, and we can go ahead and move into the steps to reproduce. I provide some more, business impact there, but the steps to reproduce are kind of the interesting stuff. So we are logging in, and the functionality was email templates for, I believe, like a marketing site. So we were able to edit the template, and after editing a template, you could send a proof email. And what we're going to do is kind of break down that payload I have there, where in quotes it goes curl, IFS, C2MK, that whole string. If it looks complex, but if you're familiar with Bash, all the backticks are doing is Bash shell expansion. So, my hope here was that the email address was being passed into a command line, which it was. And so it would interpret those backticks and execute the commands first. So we're starting with a curl command. Next up, we have that $IFS, which in Bash just evaluates to a field separator, which is a blank space. Then we have c2.mk, which is just a short domain I've purchased. It's helpful to have these short domain names if you're trying to exploit cross-site scripting, or if there's a character limit or something and you can't use a long URL. It's just helpful to have. So all we're doing is a curl command to our web server for the RCE parameter, which I just included so I'd know, and then some more nested backticks to exfiltrate the hostname command, and then we close out our email address. So that was the email address that was submitted. It was processed server side, and as you can see, we have a number of web requests generated containing the hostname. I think the second command I ran was ID, and the third command I ran was who am I. So pretty simple proof of concept, just a fun little code execution finding there. All right, this last one is definitely an interesting finding, and I wanted to highlight it because it's probably one of the more fun ones that I've had in my years of bug bounty hunting. And the preface for this one is I was invited to a live hacking event in 2022, and the customer wanted Bugcrowd, bug bounty hunters, to try phishing them. They wanted social engineering in scope, which definitely made it a pretty fun and exciting target for a live hacking event. So yeah, we can go ahead and scroll down. Yeah, let's go to the steps to reproduce. So we can start just with the summary there, because that adds a little bit of pretext to this. So it was on August 9th, we had a phishing campaign was conducted against selected company employees. A set of credentials was successfully recovered, and due to a weak security question, I was able to authenticate to the company's Okta portal. This resulted in access to the email address as well as multiple internal applications. The employee that was phished was an administrative assistant, so they probably got a lot of emails, and they happened to click on this one. And if anyone's interested about phishing, I can talk about kind of the setup we used in the software that I had going. But I had bought a domain that was basically the company name .health. As we can see here, if you want to zoom in, maybe this is just a photo of the email that I sent out. So I was spoofing the company's benefits, benefits portal. So we have benefits at company name.health. We were targeting an employee named Anna. And we said, welcome to Perkbox, Anna. This is an employee benefits thing. Click this enticing link. Upon clicking that link, it would lead them to a cloned login page of their Okta portal, which is on the next page. If you notice the URL, it is the benefits.mydomain.health. The employee fortunately entered their username and password for us, which we were able to get. However, the software I was using is called Evil Engine X, which when configured correctly, it would actually act as a reverse proxy to catch their MFA token and sign you in successfully. Unfortunately, I hadn't set it up correctly, so I was prompted with their two-factor screen. The question you can see there is, where did you meet your spouse or significant other? And of course, I guessed school. And if we scroll down, that was correct, and I was granted access to their corporate email address as well as their Okta portal. Lots of juicy stuff that I can't show, but it was a pretty good finding, and they were pretty happy with that. So yeah, that's definitely probably one of the more fun findings that I've had. So those were kind of the four that I had just prepared, but this leads me to the end of my presentation. That's all that I had prepared, but we can open it up for any questions that anyone has.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for that link and Chris. It was brilliant. And thanks for sharing the case studies as well. So folks, you have any questions? Folks online can type in their question maybe.
Talk about the different hacker styles. What's your style? How do you normally hunt for a bug?
Yeah, definitely. So the question was about the different hacking styles. What's my style, and generally, how do I approach a target? Is that correct? So I kind of touched on what I've seen people have different hacker styles, right? Mainly, you could break it down into the manual hunting versus automation. I'd always kind of preferred the manual hunting method for the reasons I'd outlined before. It seems like getting into automation, a lot of these guys have just been doing it so long that it's a very daunting thing to get into or compete with. Versus manual hunting, all you need to do is kind of have some creativity or think in a way that other people haven't, or even discover an asset that other people haven't. I was looking at a HR portal for a little bit, and I happened to change my user settings in just a way that kind of granted me access to a new subdomain, and that led to a number of great findings. So it's really what works for you, whether you want to do a manual holistic approach or you want to try to be someone who's always doing very deep reconnaissance, doing subdomain enumeration, monitoring assets. I know some of these automation people have scripts set up that will monitor JavaScript files every 2 hours to see if new functionality is added to a website. So you can definitely be as creative as you want, and that's kind of one of the great things about it is if you're creative and you find a niche, it can pay off with some big payouts. Did that answer your question?
So, like you described about your journey, how you started in. So, like, do you have any tips for someone who's new, like which vulnerabilities, like web vulnerabilities, they should like target to like brush up, or which are like more commonly available so that people can easily get going?
Yeah, definitely. So in terms of kind of common bugs to look at, I'd say once you have a general familiarity with the OWASP top 10 and a familiarity with various testing tools, I think I mentioned going through kind of Portsfigur's Web Academy is a great resource. And you're looking for your first bug. I like to kind of hunt for access control type issues and authenticated testing. So I would say that the easiest, or in my opinion, one of the easiest vulnerabilities to find would be insecure direct object reference, so an IDOR issue. Basically, if you're hunting and you saw numerical identifiers, you could try to increment or decrement those identifiers and see if you could pull back data belonging to other people. These issues are everywhere. It's very hard to get right, and that's the reason why it's so prevalent. I've also had just a lot of luck with cross-site scripting. I know a lot of people kind of think that cross-site scripting is it's getting harder and harder to find, but I was actually on a work pen test this week, and today I've found 18 instances of cross-site scripting. So it's still out there, like it's very, very prevalent, and I think it's one of the more satisfying bugs to hunt for personally. It almost feels like a puzzle, and you're kind of rewarded by getting that alert box pop up. So those would be the two that I like to focus on: cross-site scripting and then generally access control stuff.
Oh, gotcha. Thank you.
Have you found that like older companies that are using maybe slightly older services tend to have more vulnerabilities compared to maybe newer software? Yeah, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think a lot of the more modern sites are kind of built with these, I guess, more modern JavaScript frameworks that kind of do a lot of that output encoding, or they handle input data in a better way. So with newer sites, you would definitely be less likely to see something like SQL injection or cross-site scripting. That's why it's great to kind of focus on those access control issues, because those are everywhere and those are very, very prevalent regardless of the technology.
Okay, someone on the online asked, like, could you suggest a VDP program on Bugcrowd for beginners?
Yeah, definitely. So for anyone not familiar, I think Link touched on it. VDP is a vulnerability disclosure program, and those are programs that generally don't pay out with monetary payments. They do either points or just kind of kudos-based awards. Specifically for Bugcrowd, I believe there's a number of government programs right now that may be good. I think they were added within the last few months. So those might be definitely good programs to look at if you're looking for something to get started. Otherwise, I could definitely take a look and see some other programs that I would recommend. I believe there is one from Cengage recently, which was like a learning company, and they've just started a VDP on Bugcrowd as well. So generally, you just want to see a company that's maybe added new assets recently or has a pretty wide scope, and those would be good targets to hunt on.
Mentioned that you have a lot of certifications, and if you could go back, you would kind of change around the order you would do it. What order would you do, and what certifications would you get to be a pen tester?
Yeah, definitely. I think you've definitely touched on a very hot topic in pen testing, and we're kind of seeing an interesting shift. Like when I got started, there was not that many certification providers. Other than doing a super expensive SANS course, your options were really offensive security for those well-known certifications. In the last few years, I think we've seen lots of new certification providers pop up, whether that's smaller companies or even one-man shops who are just kind of putting out courses on Udemy or something. So those are good. Those small ones are great because you definitely get more knowledge for a better cost. But unfortunately, if you are looking for a job in pen testing, it still is those big name certifications like offensive security that'll kind of get you through the door. So definitely do what's within your means, that you don't need to go out and buy a super expensive course. There's other ways to demonstrate your skill. But the reality is those ones do hold a lot of weight.
So I think this is an extension to the question just asked. So I think a lot of us are looking out for jobs or like whether it's internship or full time, how much weightage and a certification holds on your resume rather than like let's say if someone's doing like a cybersecurity minor in their bachelor's or some cybersecurity masters or they have something to show up as a bug bounty. So what would you suggest like is the weightage of the certification, just the certification, whether it's needed or not needed nowadays?
So if we're saying like just a resume with a certification, that's good. But I can speak from personal experience on my team right now at work. We have a 4-person, like my team, and 2 of those 4 people don't hold their OSCP or any major certifications, and they were still, they're still great testers. They were able to get hired because they had other stuff, whether in their work background or through bug bounty hunting, through an active blog, through publications. So it's not all or nothing with a certification. You can have other things that are definitely appealing, and employers do look for those.
Interesting. Thank you. Okay, so we have another question from Saurabh who's asking, when working with Burp for that 1 month which you described, approximately how much time did you spend on learning concepts and research versus practically trying out different ideas to attack with?
Yeah, definitely. That's a good question. I'd say starting out, I'd been interested in cybersecurity, so I had an understanding of some of the common web vulnerabilities. And so I really just did pick a program and start hunting. However, I wouldn't say I wasn't learning concepts or anything during that time. Some of the best resources was on HackerOne. They disclose a lot of reports. So if you encounter a technology or see something familiar, try searching the HackerOne disclosed reports for that, as you may get some ideas on what exploits to try. So it's definitely kind of a continual process of encountering a new technology, a new situation, digging in, doing some research to learn a bit more, and then weaponizing those concepts and seeing if it works for you.
Folks, any other question from anyone here in person? Any questions online?
And I'll also be online in the Discord if anyone does have a question that they don't want to ask in the group setting. Feel free to ping me or message me, and I'm happy to help out and answer any other questions offline.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. Thank you so much. I think Link is typing in something. Link, can you hear us though? Now, at least.
So it looks like he's provided a link to Bugcrowd, and you can sort by vulnerability disclosure programs. So for anyone curious, yeah, you can go ahead and create a Bugcrowd account and see all the companies out there that you could start hacking on.
Thanks, Link. It is Link here though. Hey, Link, can you hear us? Like, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Was that,
Oh, I don't think.
at me or Link? I don't know if his
I think it's Link. Link's trying to speak, I guess. Oh, okay. Okay. I think, Chris, do you have any final thoughts?
No, like I said, I'll be active in the Discord if anyone does have any questions that they want to ask me. If there's anything that comes up at all, if you guys want any more resources or me to write down anything I talked about today, please don't hesitate to reach out, and I can get you guys that information.
Got it. Thank you so much, Chris, for this. All right, I think, thank you, Chris and Link, for joining us. And it was a great session. I know we had some technical difficulty for some of the folks online, but I think in person it was great. It went well, I guess, because here it was all fine. We didn't experience any like voice or like sharing issues or anything. I think so folks like both Link and Chris are there on our Discord as well, so you can always reach out to them. And like if anytime, and like if you have any questions, you can reach out to us. We can like pass them the questions too, if in case. So thank you so much, Chris. Thank you so much, Link. I think that's it for our hack night today. And thank you for joining us. And you can, Chris, you can definitely let us know about the internship opportunity that you talked about, because I think quite a few folks would be looking for that right now. So you can post it on the jobs channel whenever you get the time.
Yeah, definitely. I'll post that link once I get it.
Okay, awesome. All right. Thank you, folks. Thanks a lot for joining us, and have a great day. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for having me. Thanks.